Welcome to Inside Out and In Between. I'm your host Miriam, a naturopath and someone who is endlessly curious about what lives beneath the surface of our mental and emotional health. This is a space for the stories we carry, the healing that takes time, and the in-between moments that often say the most. Whether you're here to reflect, feel seen, or just be, you're in the right place. So let's begin. So today I wanted to chat about mitochondria and mood and the effects of mitochondria on our mood and cellular health as well. So basically, if you don't know what the mitochondria is tiny structures inside of our bodies that are inside of our cells that act like the power plants, and they create something called ATP or energy. It produces the energy your body and brain needs in order for them to function. Because the brain uses so much of this energy, healthy mitochondria is so essential when it comes to mood regulation and healthy cognition and just overall mental stability and health. And so dysfunctional mitochondria can lead to things like low energy, brain fog, and mood disorders, which we will be discussing and getting into a lot of depth about today. I just wanted to talk about this so people understand mitochondria and its importance, but also I wanted to, in the first few episodes of this podcast, I wanted to break down some logistics when it comes to our body and also flag the fact that there is different parts of our bodies that are essential for our mental health or that play a major role within the regulation and stability of our mental health. One of those things is the vagus nerve, which we chat about in the last episode. And then this episode is about the mitochondria and mitochondrial dysfunction and its effects on mental health. And mitochondria has a lot of links to depression. One of the big signs of mitochondrial dysfunction is the brain fog, burnout, and low motivation. And some common signs that you'll see is the brain fog constantly happening. And the worst feeling is when you don't realize that you're getting the brain fog. Then it happens and you're like, wait a minute, I remember that I was supposed to remember this specific thing about this, but then I just forgot it. For me, I'd always tell myself to remember something, constantly remember myself. I remind myself, say it's an hour before I leave, and every 5 minutes I'm like, Mariam, don't forget this, Mariam, don't forget this, every 5 minutes. And then when it comes to the last 10 minutes and I'm in the car and I drive up the road, and then 5 minutes later I'm like, oh, I forgot that. I've had brain fog before and it's just one of the worst feelings. But yes, brain fog and difficulty concentrating is one of those things that happens to you when you have mitochondrial dysfunction. Most of these symptoms as well that come with mitochondrial dysfunction are symptoms for other issues as well. As a naturopath, or naturopaths in general, or anyone in holistic health, looks at the body in a way that is holistic and in a way that is telling me this is what they could be presenting with. So tick off the boxes for each thing that you think it is, and then eventually you narrow it down to one thing. And I'm pretty sure this is the same route that doctors take as well, where it's just an elimination process based off of data, based off of reviews, based off of studies, based off of how the patient is presenting, their blood work, scans, any of that stuff. All that stuff kind of ticks off boxes and excludes the other things that you think it is. These symptoms that are showing for mitochondrial dysfunction could also be other things that the patient could potentially have, like depression or anxiety or a few other issues as well. It could be a multi-disease situation where you have to kind of communicate to the client that this could be happening. Let's check all these markers and let's do some scans or whatever it is and just make sure that this is not what it is. and then we can move forward. For the average healthy person, mitochondrial dysfunction and these things showing up could be temporary, because in the current moment, you're in a high stress situation and you're getting brain fog and you're just struggling to concentrate. And so these things could just be temporary in the moment, but it presents as mitochondrial dysfunction on a cellular level. When you do experience these mental health symptoms, or mitochondrial dysfunction symptoms, you want to be able to build the tools to reduce the amount of times you could potentially be experiencing these mental health symptoms. Other signs of mitochondrial dysfunction could be chronic fatigue or feeling physically or mentally drained. Sometimes you could mentally feel drained, but not actually physically. Low motivation or a lack of drive, mood swings, or feelings of depression and anxiety, which we mentioned. And then also poor recovery from stress or illness. So you could find that usually when you get the flu, it lasts 3, 4, 5 days, but it ends up lasting 2 weeks. It's a sign that your body's in a high stress environment, and you need to do things to actively help yourself get past that stress or illness or whatever it is that you're going through. With ATP and energy that is created inside of the mitochondria, it isn't just about the physical, but it's also about the cellular. Energy isn't just about physically feeling tired or awake. It's about how well your cells produce that ATP for the rest of your bodily functions. ATP is the molecule that powers cellular activity all over the body. And so if your mitochondria isn't working properly, then your brain cells won't be able to work well. And so this can lead to mental fatigue that you may be feeling, or the mood disturbances. The link between mitochondria and mental health is that mitochondria is central to brain function. And the neurons inside of your brain need huge amounts of ATP to function. A 2018 review in Frontiers in Neuroscience emphasized that mitochondrial dysfunction as a shared mechanism with major depression, bipolar, schizophrenia. And so this is super important for us to support mitochondrial function. Sometimes when you have an emotional conversation with somebody and your partner, and you've spent hours chatting to them, and then you end up overthinking things, then you end up staying up late because you're just thinking about what's happening. Then you go to bed, wake up the next day. You're not physically tired, but you're mentally fatigued. That is a sign of low mitochondrial dysfunction. And I've experienced this before on multiple occasions. It does affect you in a negative way, because you won't be able to go about your day doing the things that you need to do, like go to work. Because there is mitochondrial dysfunction, it then leads to you waking up the next day and feeling like you're in a situation where you almost feel worse than the night before, because of the fact that you haven't allowed your body to feel better about the situation. And yes, it's hard when in times when you have emotional conversations with partners or you're overthinking, it is hard to get by those things. Some of those things do take time to get past. The overthinking is a part of your nature, and it's a part of something that you have to do in order to move past the situation. But the amount that we overthink these days is really affecting us. We make 35,000 decisions a day. And I'm sure a part of those decisions is overthinking. Our ancestors only used to make about 2,500 decisions a day. So naturally, we aren't wired to make that many decisions and overthink that much about choices that we need to make throughout our day. And so in turn, it affects your ATP production inside of your mitochondria, and then causing a dysfunction and then making you feel even worse. So stress lowers ATP production. And then this can increase oxidative stress and also potentially damaging the mitochondria. There was a study in 2018 that showed that the mitochondria stress model showing how psychological stress disrupts ATP production. Let's say when you decide you want to go on a holiday, and the month before, the week before you go on a holiday, you've been put into a high stress moment at work, then the whole time you're thinking, oh, I can't wait to go on a holiday just to relax and feel good and not worry about all these things. And so when you go on the holiday, you still don't feel relaxed and you still feel stressed. That's another sign of ATP depletion. It just makes you feel depleted. Rest in these moments isn't enough when your stress is on a cellular level. Your body is stressed. It's not producing enough ATP. The mitochondria is not working the way it should. And so sometimes when people come back from holidays, they get sick, but it's not necessarily because of you got sick from the holiday or from wherever you went. It's because of your body was trying to relax, but it couldn't because it was trying to fix itself. You come back from your holiday and you end up getting sick. The stress was so high prior to leaving for that holiday that it negatively affected you on a cellular level. And then once you finish from that holiday, you come back and you feel like, oh, I feel physically fine, but I'm mentally so tired. Or even you don't even feel physically fine. You come back and you say, oh, that was a waste of a holiday. I still feel stressed. And in the back of your mind while you're on the holiday, you're probably counting down the hours till when you get back home because you know you're going to have to face reality and have to come back to this same stressful feeling you were feeling prior to the holiday. Sometimes doing less can still make you feel depleted. There is a disconnect between doing less and still feeling depleted. And that feeling can almost make you feel worse because you're trying to help yourself get better and you're trying to understand what is going on inside of your brain and why you're feeling like this, and you're doing the things that you have to do and you're resting and relaxing. But because of that high stress moment, initially you want to stop yourself from reaching that point. I'm not saying like you can't feel stressed. You're allowed to feel stressed. That's totally fine. But chronic stress for a long time, you need to learn how to get yourself out of those situations and change your environment, not just change that moment. That moment shouldn't be the only thing that changes. It should be a constant thing. The chronic stress shouldn't be the constant. There's been clients that will come and say, oh, I sleep fine, but I still have no energy. It's the same thing. And I'm sure a lot of you guys probably agree that you might sleep fine, but you're waking up with no energy. A part of that is also diet, what your diet looks like, how much you eat, because where we get our food from matters and what we eat matters. So if you're just constantly eating like processed foods and all that stuff, obviously you're not going to have energy the next day because where are you going to get that energy from? A lot of clients come in and say they sleep fine, but they wake up the next day with no energy. That comes down to diet, but that also comes down to a few other things like inflammation, blood sugar regulation, the ability to handle stress, like we talked about last episode about the vagus nerve and how it's important in regulating your stress response. But the way I approach this is by increasing mitochondrial health and decreasing dysfunction. Inflammation is one of those things that negatively impacts the whole body, not just the brain. Chronic inflammation blocks mitochondrial function and alters brain energy metabolism. A study conducted in 2020 found elevated CRP, which is an annular pentameric protein found in blood plasma. And these rise when there is a lot of inflammation within the body. And what also rises is pro-inflammatory cytokines. In this study, the patients with major depression were linked to mitochondrial dysfunction. So their depression was linked to the fact that their mitochondria was dysfunctional. There's been times where the night before I sleep, I will have something that's processed unhealthy, whatever it is, or like very high sugar foods before I sleep. While I'm sleeping, I think I'm resting, and then I wake up the next day and I feel horrible. I feel like my body hasn't processed the food properly that I ate the night before, but also I'm struggling to go to the bathroom, but also I'm just feeling out of it and I don't want to get out of bed. And sometimes you drag yourself, you're just feeling lethargic. Sometimes that feeling, even though you have slept that 8-9 hours, 7-8-9 hours, sometimes that feeling is from the type of food that you ate the night before. Before you go to bed, 2 hours before, if you've had something healthy, you wouldn't necessarily feel like that the next day. But if you have something unhealthy, you're guaranteed to feel horrible the next day. And this is all because of inflammation. The foods that you ate were inflamed. The foods that I ate when that happened caused a lot of inflammation inside of my body. It hinders you from producing enough energy to be able to process anything the next day or continue normal bodily functions because your body is just overwhelmed with inflammation from the type of food that you're eating or the processed meal that you just ate. So it also affects the gut-brain axis. And every time your gut is inflamed, your brain runs low on power. Gut inflammation affects your brain so much so that the next day, if you've had something horrible to eat, you are guaranteed to feel low in energy, fatigued, because you haven't supplied your body with the essential nutrients and minerals that it needs to create the ATP. You haven't provided your mitochondria with the essential nutrients and everything that it needs to create that ATP for your brain to function normally the next day. Usually, clients with leaky gut or IBS experience things like mood swings so often because of that, because their gut bacteria is out of whack. I find IBS to be like a label doctors use. They don't know what it is, so they just call it IBS. They don't know what's going on with your gut, so they just call it IBD or IBS. Clients with leaky gut and IBS experience low moods or mood swings often because of the fact that when your gut is inflamed, your brain runs on low power. And so it just doesn't want to do anything. So you experience the fatigue, you experience the brain fog. And unfortunately, those are things that come with having leaky gut or IBS. Another one we mentioned before was blood sugar and blood sugar regulation. So glucose is the primary mitochondrial fuel. These fluctuations in blood sugar can directly affect your ATP and mood regulation. Why? Because it is that fuel. If there is too much sugar in our mitochondria, it's going to get overwhelmed and then it's not going to function the way it should be functioning. In a 2024 review on major depressive disorder, there was a connection between hypoglycemia and mitochondrial dysfunction, obviously showing that high glucose levels inside of the body can cause that dysfunction inside of the mitochondria, then affecting your brain and affecting, depressive symptoms. There have been times where I have skipped meals or had a sugar crash, and it always hits my mood first. Place that I feel it is in my mood. And one thing that always comes up for me is I get very irritable. Yes, it's probably a sign that I'm hangry, but it's also because I'm having a sugar crash. And usually when I go more than 7 hours without eating, when it's sleep time, I'm fine. But when it comes to throughout the day, if I haven't eaten for 7 hours and I'm doing things to actively expel that energy, I end up having a sugar crash. And it's not fun. Besides the obvious symptoms that you experience with having a sugar crash, like nausea, which is one thing that I experience, another one is irritability. When I am hungry, or even if I'm not hungry, I just haven't eaten for 7 hours, I get very irritable. And then I realize that, oh, my brain needs food right now. My brain needs sugar or glucose to function. because I am not going to be able to hold my head up. I'm going to be irritable. My husband is going to be mad at me because I'm going to be very angry at him for no reason, for something stupid that he did, or for something that just got in my nerve in that moment because I had a sugar crash. That's one of the things that it does cause, sugar crash. Mitochondrial dysfunction, when you have high blood sugar, causes sugar crashes. It's so important to balance your blood sugar, even if you are someone that doesn't have diabetes or insulin resistance or any type of blood sugar issues. If you don't regulate your blood sugar and balance out your blood sugar on a day-to-day and you watch what you eat, you can have the occasional fun thing to have that's full of sugar. Not saying don't enjoy your life. No, I'm just saying if you don't balance out your blood sugar, it could make your mental health worse and your energy as well. One thing that comes up in conversation a lot is intermittent fasting or keto and its effects on brain health as well. Intermittent fasting and keto gets brought up a lot. One thing I noticed that people experience with keto rather than intermittent fasting is the brain fog. Brain fog happens even though keto helps people lose weight and intermittent fasting helps regulate people's blood sugar. If you are breaking your fast with something sugary or something high in carbohydrates, then it's going to affect your blood sugar within those 7 hours that you are eating or 6 hours that you are eating. So ideally, you want to break it with something that's not going to spike your blood sugar, something high in protein. Keto causes a lot of people brain fog or mental fatigue because of the fact that you're not getting that constant carb, heavy, glucose push inside of your blood. And so your body's trying to stabilize and get used to the fact that it's not getting any more carbs as much as it used to. And so your body was constantly functioning on this high carb, high sugar diet that once you do keto, you experience all these symptoms. It's your body trying to regulate itself back to how it should be. Mental health isn't just in the mind, but it's also in the cell. Mental health is always just looked at as how it's said, in the mind. It's so important to look at mental health in a holistic perspective. So looking at it in a way that is outside of the brain. And this is what I'm here to show you guys. I'm here to educate you guys on how important functions outside of the brain are important for your mental health. And one of those things is the mitochondria. The mitochondria is all over the body. The biochemical model of depression includes the mitochondria failing and oxidative damage and also nutrient depletion. This shifted my naturopathic lens when it comes to seeing the definition of mental health change from being just something that's brain or central nervous system or peripheral nervous system related and is now involved in the rest of the body. Now, depression isn't something that's just this is emotional. There's more to understanding depression and how it affects the rest of the body. And there's just more to understanding what happens outside of the brain can actually affect your mental health or affect the depression. With my naturopathic lens change, mental health support is about supporting the cell as much as the soul. You need to take care of your emotions, your soul, as much as the cell. The cell is so central to how everything functions inside of our body. And if there is an imbalance in equilibrium in any part of any function in the body, then it's going to affect our mental health. There's my, input in how important cellular health and the cell is to mental health. Stress and overthinking can lead to mitochondrial exhaustion. There is a part of the brain called the DMN, which is the default mode network inside of your brain. Constant DMN activation can drain glucose and oxygen in the brain, leading to reduced cellular efficiency and brain fatigue. So in 2011, there was a study that showed DMN dominance in depressed individuals correlates with maladaptive rumination and energy loss. In a recent post I did on Instagram, you will see that someone who overthinks or depressed individual's mind is much more overactive than a normal person's mind. This dominance is super important to understand because it shows that this is what overthinking looks like on a scan. If you ever felt times when you were mentally fatigued from just doing nothing, that's the overactive DMN and cellular fatigue. Things that can decrease the overactivation of DMN in your brain are things like mindfulness and walking and journaling. And they're not just helpful, but they are so necessary to downregulate that overactivity and help your body restore energy. Stress is I think in every episode I'll be talking about stress because stress is just so, why is it a thing? Because it just ruins everything. Well, it's a thing because it's your body's response to help you, but we just do too much of it nowadays. And so I wanted to explain that chronic stress can increase oxidative stress and inflammation inside of our bodies. So inflammation does not need to happen from just the food that we eat. It also happens from our stress. And once our bodies increase that inflammation and that oxidative stress, it can damage mitochondrial DNA and impair the function of the mitochondria, leading to that dysfunction. So the stress hormones inside of our body, like cortisol, can increase and then also disrupt mitochondrial energy production. An increase in cortisol levels can disrupt the mitochondrial energy production. Then can also lead to cellular burnout and reduced brain function. So the things that we do on a day-to-day basis within our lives that can drain your mitochondrial energy include things like poor sleep quality or inefficient sleep. So there are things that you can do to help your sleep quality and your inefficient sleep. Obviously, we want to get down to the nitty-gritties of why it's happening. We've mentioned a few reasons why it happens, but another thing that can also affect your sleep quality is a sedentary lifestyle and a lack of regular exercise. If you are not constantly finding ways to expel that excess energy inside of your body, it's going to store as fat. The energy that comes from food, then this can lead to other things. Excessive exposure to toxins as well, like pollution and chemicals in your pots, your pans, your food. If you're having non-organic foods, GMO, it's going to affect your mitochondrial function. Not only do those chemicals affect the function of the mitochondria, but they affect other things inside of your body that then affect the mitochondria. They affect your hormones. They affect your regulation of cortisol. They affect so many things. There's so much more information out there nowadays that people need to listen to it, because these chemicals, like, people will laugh at me and say, oh, why didn't you use Glad wrap, or which is cling wrap? Why don't you use like foil or any of that stuff? And I'm just like, do you know how much all that stuff affects our brains? And not only our brains, but our so many bodily functions. But I just say, okay, it's my home, you know, I do my own thing in my home, and then you can do whatever you want in yours. So boundaries. Poor diet, as we mentioned before, and not getting enough of those essential nutrients for the mitochondria to function properly. Another one is also chronic infections, or that chronic inflammation happening constantly. So chronic infections can negatively impact us because our body hasn't had time to get well again and rest. If you're having chronic infections all the time, then it's most likely you're having a mitochondria issue as well. There is a difference between mental fatigue and physical fatigue, and some people can't feel the difference, and some people are very sensitive to it. So feeling mentally drained and reduced cognitive performance, even if the body feels physically okay, is involved with mental fatigue and difficulty concentrating. Physical fatigue is more of like a muscle weakness or tiredness, where mental fatigue can feel like you have difficulty concentrating, or you're feeling mentally drained, or you have reduced cognitive performance, even if the body feels physically okay. Both of these can stem from mitochondrial dysfunction, but they may require different approaches to recovery. And so one of those approaches would be taking all the essential supplements and minerals and doing all the essential physical massages or going to see a chiro or doing your stretches. We need to do mental stretches and mental exercises in order for us to not feel mentally fatigued. Some of the best nutrients for mitochondrial support that I use on a regular basis would be CoQ10, so coenzyme Q10, which helps the mitochondria produce energy and acts as an antioxidant. Something that you should do as well if you take statins and you feel like they've affected you on a mental health side. Sometimes people don't notice it, but sometimes they feel a little bit more anxious or depressed after being on statins. I recommend that you take CoQ10 because statins can deplete CoQ10. Another one is alpha lipoic acid, which supports the mitochondrial function and also reduces oxidative stress and oxidative damage. Other important nutrients that are so important for energy are B vitamins. B vitamins and magnesium. In any person that comes in with energy issues, you give them magnesium glycinate, you give them the B vitamins and the magnesium, and things will just be so much better for that person. B vitamins are so essential in the mitochondrial function, but also in the production of ATP. Another thing as well that is super important is getting your fatty acids in. Omega-3 fatty acids is another one that is also super important for brain health and brain function and mitochondrial function. EPA and DHA are polyunsaturated fats that play a major role in brain health. And so that's why so many of us naturopaths, doctors, all of us in health talk about omega-3s so much because they are just so important for cognitive function, for your memory, for your bones, your body. It prevents cognitive decline. This is why a lot of naturopaths recommend the Mediterranean diet. If you're going to follow any diet day to day, the Mediterranean is so important because it's high in omega-3s. It's high in all the essential minerals and vitamins that you need on a day to day that assist bodily functions how they should be assisted. So omega-3s are important in mitochondrial health. Omega-3s being a part of the mitochondrial membrane enhances its fluidity and the efficiency of the electron transport chain, leading to an improved production of the energy or the ATP. So as a naturopath, we use herbs in clinic, and there are a lot of herbs that can assist with mitochondrial repair. And one of those is ginseng, which supports energy metabolism and reduces fatigue, which is another thing we give alongside B vitamins or magnesium if a client comes in with mental fatigue. Another one is rhodiola to help that person adapt with stress and improve the mitochondrial function and their resilience to stress. Ashwagandha is another one as well to also support the cell energy and reduce oxidative stress. A few other things would be given as well. If you are someone who's presented with inflammation, there would be other herbs on top of that would be given to support that inflammation and bringing it down. So once you brought it down, then the ATP production increases and everything just gets better. If you are someone that experiences any of these things that we've spoken about today, if you have just come over an infection or a viral infection, I would recommend following a recovery protocol. So some of these can be in a little recovery plan, post-stress or post-infection or feeling off. This is what you should do. So prioritize your sleep. Restoring your sleep, as we've mentioned before, is super important in your daily functions and your body getting better and your body resting and restoring and regenerating when it needs to regenerate, including the ATP production within the mitochondria. So the magnesium glycinate is an amazing one that I use, but also some herbs that primarily work on the stress management and the body's ability and resilience to stress. Another one is the nutritional support. So adopting a Mediterranean diet if you can, giving yourself the mitochondrial nutrients that you need, like the CoQ10 and the alpha lipoic acid. if you can, throughout the recovery protocol, you do some gentle physical activity or walking or yoga to stimulate the mitochondrial biogenesis and then to help it create ATP. And then also avoiding toxins and inflammatory foods like dairy and chicken, just temporarily until you get better. So have you ever thought about the fact that maybe your lack of motivation is actually just cellular burnout? And not a lot of people understand that their burnout could potentially just be because something could be happening on a cellular level that could be causing this burnout. And initially people think, I'm just overworking, I need a break. And then the break comes and then you don't actually feel like you took a break. That might be just the cellular burnout. Have a think about some of your symptoms and what you're experiencing, I guess, on a day-to-day, and when you do feel burnt out, try and think about the fact that, is it physical or is it just mental? Or is it cellular? Now I've added that one into the works. Is it mental? Is it physical? Or is it cellular? So I encourage you to explore your mitochondrial health as a part of your mental wellness journey. Thank you for being here, for listening, feeling, and being in the in-between with me. If something in today's episode moved you, stay with it and let it breathe. And if you feel called to, share this space with someone who might need it too. Until next time, be gentle with yourself. Healing isn't a straight line. This is inside out and in between.